as you can see, we are at a real life triathlon. I'm not racing, however, I have been given access to the transition area, which means I can take you guys with me through a step-by-step transition guide in a real life setting. I've collected my registration pack. Bear in mind, sometimes these will be sent to you, especially in COVID times, but today they're giving them out on the day. And there's a few key pieces that you need to check. You've got, obviously, your race number. I've actually got 2 today, so if I was wearing something different for the bike and the run, I could pin it onto my kit ready. I'll be using a tri-suit, so that will go onto my race belt. Then we've got the all-important timing chip, which has to go usually on your left ankle with the chip on it, and that has to stay on your ankle for the whole race. Don't need that until tomorrow, but swim cap, again, need that tomorrow. However, there is a couple of important stickers. Now, these have to be placed on your bike, or one of them, on your bike before you can actually be allowed through, just to identify that it is you. It has to be stuck on. And there's another one that goes on your helmet and for a bag drop as well, but it's the bike one that matters today when you're actually doing your racking. Now, before you guys pick me up on not wearing a helmet, it does vary from race to race, and this race, they don't actually require you to have a helmet in order to come into bike racking. However, check the rules, because certain events, I know Ironman, for example, you have to actually have your helmet on, your number already on your helmet, and your helmet done up to be allowed to bring your bike into racking. Obviously, you can take it home with you again, but you will need it the next day. But as for the bike itself, you can probably tell that this bike is quite naked right now. It's got no bottles on, no bike computer, no bike shoes, nutrition. It is just the bike, and that is for a reason, because obviously we're racking it the day before. That's usually the case. Some small events you will actually rack your bike on the race day. In this occasion, it's the day before, so I just need the bike to be in here by the cutoff time. Make sure you've checked what that time is, and then make sure you make a very thorough list of all the things you need for tomorrow, because yeah, you're not going to be bringing them in on the bike. You just need to make sure that you've already charged your bike. You want to check your tyre pressures, still bring a pump with you the next morning though, because you might find that you've had something go wrong overnight, or you've lost a little bit of pressure there. And then we'll talk about what exactly you need to have on your bike and transition setup when we come back tomorrow. Okay, we've fast forwarded 12 hours, 24 hours. It is now race day, in theory at least. And this is where you have to remember all of those little bits. I would seriously recommend writing a list. I do, because there's so much to remember. But I'm going to talk you through it, so this will help jog your memory if you do have a race coming up. As you can see in my hands, 2 water bottles. You want to bring your hydration ideally the day of the race, because you don't want it sat in the plastic bottles. You want it to be nice and fresh. Put that on your bike first. Well, this is my order, at least. I'm going to sort out my bike, and then I'll think about the rest of my kit. All right, so bottles in place, bike computer mounted, and also bike computer turned on so that I don't have to be waiting for that when I come out of T1. It's just there ready to go. It should start recording for me. And also, importantly, make sure your bike is in the correct gear. So for that, you'll need to know where the mount line is and whether that's on an uphill, downhill, and what sort of terrain, so that you're going to be good to go, not having to clonk all the way through the gears. And as I alluded to yesterday, you want to check your tyre pressure. So if you've got a pump with you, you can often borrow one from an event, but make sure nothing has changed overnight. Most of the time it will be entirely fine. And if you are using nutrition on your bike, if you've got a bento box or a saddlebag or whatever, now's the time to pop in your nutrition, because again, you probably don't want that sat there overnight, or if you're using it on the top tube, to tape it on now. Once the bike is ready, that's probably the most important part, which you can't really do without. You can then start to think about the rest of your kit. And I find it helps if you think about the actual transition process and what you'd be wearing at what different points. And that will make sure you've got it laid out, well, all of it laid out, but also laid out in the correct order of when you want to reach it, because you don't want to have something you need first at the back of your pile and vice versa. So if you think you come out of the swim with your hat and goggles already on and your wetsuit on, so that isn't needed now, you need that to put on once you finish your setup. So the first thing you're going to need once you've taken off all of that is your helmet, because that needs to be put on before you touch your bike, and it's just a really good routine habit to get into, is putting your helmet on first. So for that, you want to leave it open and facing you, so as you pick it up, it goes onto your head and you do up that strap. If you're wearing sunglasses, then if you can leave them actually on your helmet so you can put them on as you go out, that'll be quicker. If you're not worried about time, then obviously have them separately, but again, have them open so they're quick and easy to put on. Before I go any further, I should probably point out that, again, this setup is unique to this race, and every race is a little bit different. Sometimes you get given transition bags, so you'll have a bag to put all of your transition kit for T1 and a separate bag for T2, which involves a little bit more thinking, because you will obviously have to make sure that you've got it already packed, and they often have to be put in the night before, which can be a little bit stressful. In this situation, you've got plenty of time to lay everything out in front of you and methodically work through it. Talking of a methodical process, we've covered the helmet, it's now the rest of your bike kit. You'll be probably wearing your tri-suit underneath your wetsuit, I would imagine. So sometimes you can put a towel on the ground like I have in this situation. Make sure though you are within your space allowed and you're respecting your fellow competitors who are going to be next door trying to squeeze all of their stuff into that small space. If you are going to do a flying mount and you've got your shoes on your bike, make sure that they're fixed with elastic bands and the pedals are in the right position for you to be able to wheel your bike out of transition. If you're going to be putting them on in transition, then you might want to dry your feet. Sometimes you can have a towel in certain cases, but make sure you keep it within your space, you're not encroaching on your neighbour's space. And importantly, your shoes are open and they're facing in the right direction so you can get your feet in really quickly. One final bit before you get on the bike, very important, your race number. So unless you've pinned it onto a race jersey that you're putting on, you're most likely to have a tri-suit, and there you'll want a race belt. So fix your number onto your race belt and leave it, if you're clipping it, leave it open so you can put it on really quickly, or if you're going for the step 3 method, again, have it facing in the correct direction, because all of these little things will add up. So that is all of your kit sorted for your bike and your running, your transition. You're now going to have to leave the transition area, often shuts sort of half an hour or so before your race. Make sure you've noted that time so you've worked backwards and you've got enough time to sort everything methodically. There's nothing worse than being in a rush in transition, being ushered out and not sure if you've left everything as you wanted. And that then leaves you with the final few preparations. You want to put your wetsuit on, your cap and goggles, and get ready to race. However, if you're on your own and you're not lucky enough to have a supporter, you're going to have your kit, like some extra warm clothes, maybe some shoes, your drink, etc., still with you. Well, you need to put all of this in one bag and go and drop it off at bag drop. You usually be given a label or something like that. You can put it all away and then it'll be there when you finish. All right, play along with me here. I've just come out of the swim. Obviously, I'm not actually wet. However, the first things you want to do is get your wetsuit off your upper body whilst it's still nice and wet and easy to do so. Once you've got both hands free, get hat and goggles off, put them in one hand, and you're good to run to your bike. Use this transition time from the swim to the bike wisely. Have a bit of time in your head, especially if it's a long transition, to remember exactly what your process is going to be when you get to your bike. And most importantly, remembering where your bike is. So make sure you've noted the number and how far down the row it is, and maybe any landmarks or anything that are going to help you find it. Because once adrenaline's flowing, you're a bit out of breath. It's crazy how hard it is to find your bike. Okay, great, I found my bike. I want to get rid of my hat and goggles, put them on the ground where they're not going to be in the way of your rest of your kit. You'll appreciate that later. And then you need to get your wetsuit off. Hopefully, it's still nice and wet, so it's going to be easy to remove. If you are someone who wants to take your time in transition, you can sit down for this if you really struggle to get it off. And again, push it out of the way, but make sure you're not getting in the way of your fellow competitors. You wouldn't want it if you came back and there's a wetsuit lying in your way. Next thing, I would say first things first is put your helmet on, because you're going to make sure you're penalty free. Once your helmet is on and done up, you can remove your bike. You've got a few things to do before you get there, but yeah, you're sorted. Glasses can just stay until you're out of transition. Race number, if you're using a race belt, you want to pop that on. It's quite often to do it this easier to put it on this way, spin it around because it needs to be at the back for the bike. And then obviously it depends on what you've chosen for your shoes. If you've got your shoes attached to your bike, you're doing your flying mount, you're good to go. Grab your bike, start running. In my case, I might want to just dry my feet a little bit on my towel, and then I'm going to put my shoes on and run out. Okay, it's worth practicing actually maneuvering your bike for transitions 1 and 2. If you can hold it by the saddle, you can run so much more freely, get your breath back, and also just look at where you're going and plan as you head for the bike mount zone. Make sure you've done your recce ahead of time so you know exactly where you're heading out of transition, and most importantly, where that mount line is. Once you've crossed it, you can get on your bike and head on your way. You'll notice my sunnies are still on my head. Once I'm actually out on the bike and riding, I can take them off, put them on my face, and then I'm comfortable. I'm not wasting any time. So, time to go. Okay, make sure you start slowing down well before the dismount line, because you need to be off your bike before you get to this all-important line. Whatever method you're doing, if you are taking your feet out of your shoes and you're putting them on top of your shoes, start doing that well before then, because there'll be lots going on with everybody else getting off their bikes and having to think about what they're doing as well. Now, sunglasses is something else you want to think about. If you're going to keep them on for the run, then great. Just make sure you've got them underneath your helmet straps so you can take your helmet off and your glasses stay in place. If, however, you're going to be taking them off, make sure you've done that before you've got transition and you pop them back in your helmet so you're good to go. Whew, that was a long, tough bike ride. All seriousness though, when you are coming back into T2, you still want to push your bike, but it's going to be harder to find your place because obviously you don't have your shiny bike there to remind you where your area is. So this is when it's even more important to remember the numbers and kind of roughly whereabouts you are, and maybe keep an eye out for your trainers. First things first, get that bike mounted. You're now safe to take your helmet off and go in whatever order you like. I personally like to reverse what I did earlier, so get the helmet off first. Okay, we're obviously going in slow motion today. My shoes are still on my feet. If I was in a race situation, I would have loosened my shoes, taken them off, left them on my bike and run pushing it. But obviously it depends on your own setup and your confidence. If you're going to run in through transition in your bike shoes, then as soon as you've taken your helmet off, it's time to get the shoes off. Okay, it's time for socks. Obviously it depends on what race distance you're doing and your preference. You might have even put your socks on for the bike leg. And an Ironman, that's something I actually opt to do. But have them ready so they're good to go on the correct feet. You don't want to be fussing around with that. I leave them inside my shoes so that I know which one is for which. As you can see, I've chosen to sit down. You might think it takes longer, but actually you could end up saving time because you can just do things a little more efficiently and then you're really going to be good to go rather than hopping around, losing your balance and trying to go. Obviously, if you're in a short distance race, you probably want to use elastic laces to save you time there. Now, I'm dressed and good to run. I'll change my bib as I'm on my way out. Grab whatever it is you might want, which you can put on the way. Yeah, I finished! Okay, obviously I haven't done an actual race today, but hopefully you guys have enjoyed coming with me step by step through a transition in what is basically a real life race scenario, just without getting wet. Best of both worlds. Hopefully that's helped jog your memory and get you on track ready ahead of your next race. If you've enjoyed it, hit that like button. Remember, you can follow us on GTN on all our social media platforms and on YouTube.